In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro called for the lifting of the U.S.-imposed sanctions, main demand of the International Conference on the Political Process in Venezuela. In Brazil, the 19th Terra Libre Indigenous camp moves forward. Among its objectives are the demarcation of their lands, an end to violence, and a climate emergency decree. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the U.S. of destroying globalization, which the United Nations hails as the greatest good of the world. Hello, welcome From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called for the lifting of the sanctions imposed by the U.S. as the main demand of the International Conference on the Political Process in Venezuela. The head of state stated that the main demand of the Caribbean country is the full lifting of the sanctions imposed by Washington regarding the meeting to be held on April 25th in the city of Bogota. In this context, President Maduro said the country is looking forward to this international conference called by the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro.
We do not accept anything less from that conference in Bogota, the lifting of all sanctions so that Venezuela may have commercial freedom, financial freedom, economic freedom of its regular activity. In order to be able to recover everything that needs to be recovered in the economic, productive, and social fields, so that blackmail, restraint, coercion, permanent aggression on our economy, on our social life ends. The lifting of all sanctions on Venezuela, all of them. We do not accept less. We do not compromise for less. Lifting all the sanctions.
The President of Venezuela's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, elaborated on the conditions set out by the Bolivarian government to resume the dialogue with the oppositions.
Venezuela has been very clear with the opposition sectors. It has been very clear with the countries that have asked us about it. Venezuela has 5 points to take in order to promote dialogue among Venezuelans and to move forward so that the political, social, and electoral scenario may take place under normal conditions. The first is the lifting of all illegal sanctions, the unilateral and legitimate coercive measures that since 2015 have been imposed against Venezuela, almost in a number that is close to 1,000 sanctions against our economy, of our oil, our gold, and against our people too. Second is the money of Venezuela that has been stolen, that has been illegally seized, kidnapped, the gold of Venezuela that has been illegally retained in England, the money that is in European banks. The profits of Citgo have to be returned in full to whom they belong, which is the people of Venezuela. Third, that the lawful policies of attack through the adventures of the United States courts or the International Criminal Court be stopped because they directly affect our most important leaders. And finally, that the diplomat Alex Saab be released immediately.
On Monday, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, arrived in Venezuela to review the bilateral cooperation agenda. Upon his arrival, the Prime Minister was welcomed by Vice Minister for the Caribbean, Paulo Licausi. The visit is part of the agenda of the pro-tempore President of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood and bilateral cooperation in the political and socio-economic spheres with Venezuela. Gonsalves' last visit to Venezuela took place on February 7th, during which he met with President Nicolas Maduro, where both heads of state consolidated a series of strategic alliances in the energy, education, and scientific fields. On Monday, Indigenous delegations began arriving in Brasilia to participate in the 2023 edition of Terra Libre Indigenous Camp, held from April 24th to the 28th. More than 6,000 Indigenous people are expected in the federal capital for this week's activities. The Terra Libre Indigenous Camp is the largest indigenous mobilization in Brazil and demands the demarcation of their lands, an end to violence, and climate emergency decree. On Monday, participants have scheduled a march to demand the withdrawal of anti-indigenous proposals in Congress such as Bill 191, which allows mining on indigenous lands. The bill, backed by the government of Jair Bolsonaro, has been paralyzed since March 2022, while President Luis Inácio da Silva called on Congress to withdraw this legislative plan.
Today, we are with expectation, with the hope that we will protect our territory, our woods, that they will offer more resources for projects to be more sustainable. That is what we expect. I know that the previous government was very bad for us. He set the indigenous peoples against each other. This was very negative for us. Now, with Lula, we expect him to offer more resources for us, for our projects.
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the United States of devoting itself to destroying globalization, which is phrased within the United Nations as the supreme good of the world. Speaking at a meeting of the United Nations Security Council, the Russian Foreign Minister pointed to the fact that Washington, in a desperate attempt to assert its dominance, has devoted itself to destroying globalization with Western financial and economic aggression that destroys the benefits of globalization. Lavrov further denounced that Washington and the rest of the Western subordinates invoke their rules to justify illegitimate measures against those who formulate their policies in accordance with international law and refuse to follow the interests of that North American country. In this regard, he called on the West to behave decently and respect the other members of the world community.
As happened during the Cold War, we are on the brink of an abyss. The situation is worsening due to the loss of confidence in multilateralism, while the financial actions of the West are destroying the assets of globalization at a time when the United States and its allies are renouncing diplomacy and demanding to settle their relations on the battlefield. All this within the framework of the United Nations, which was created to prevent and stop the world from falling back into the scourge of war. Those responsible must show political responsibility so that the culture of dialogue can be reborn.
The Russian Foreign Minister announced that the United States and its allies are applying significant force to undermine multilateralism.
The United States and its allies are trying to undermine multilateralism as a regional position, and this cooperation around the economy and security for decades has also been developed within the ASEAN. This system allowed to adopt consensual approaches that benefited a handful of members of the ASEAN and its partners, including Russia, China, India, Australia, and the Republic of Korea. And so, a true inclusive multilateralism was achieved by promoting the Indo-Pacific strategy. Washington has advocated a policy to destroy this structure.
Lavrov also called for speeding up the reform of the UN Security Council in order to consolidate the emergence of a multipolar world.
The reform of the Security Council must be accelerated to include countries from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The excessive over-representation of the West in this United Nations body undermines multilateralism. At the initiative of Venezuela, we have created the Group of Friends for the Defense of the United Nations Charter, and we urge all states that respect the Charter to join this group. We must also take advantage of the potential of the BRICS, the Eurasian Economic Union, the OTSC, and logically rely also more decisively on the regional groupings of the Global South.
The head of Russian diplomacy warned that the United Nations system is being threatened by Western powers.
President Vladimir Putin urged the convening of a summit of permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The leaders of China and France supported the initiative, which unfortunately could not be articulated for the time being. This issue has a lot to do with multilateralism in a direct way, not only because the five powers have a privilege over the others, but because of their particular responsibility according to the United Nations Charter and in the preservation and maintenance of the international peace and security. This is precisely what we need right now to preserve the United Nations system, which is threatened to collapse as a result of the actions of the West.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, during a meeting in New York with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, handed over a letter addressed to President Vladimir Putin regarding the improvement of the Black Sea grain agreement. According to spokesman Stefan Dujarric, Guterres also took note of Russia's concerns regarding the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding on the promotion of Russian food products and fertilizers on world markets. Foreign Minister Lavrov said the letter with the UN Secretary General's ideas on the grain agreement should be examined, but Russia does not see any will in the West to actually implement it. 9 European countries held the second edition of the North Sea Summit aimed at scaling up wind power generation and the push for renewable energy sources. Hosted by Belgium in the coastal town of Ostend, the meeting gathered European Union leaders from France, Germany, Ireland, Denmark, the Netherlands and Luxembourg, along with European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen. Norway and the United Kingdom also participated, with the latter represented by UK Energy Security Secretary Grant Shapps. In a joint statement published ahead of the meeting, the leaders of the 9 nations emphasized the need to build and secure more offshore wind farms and their interconnectors to reach their climate goals. According to the statement, the summit's collective goal is to boost offshore wind power generation to 120 gigawatts by 2030 and at least 300 gigawatts by 2050. The Berlin-Brandenburg Airport in Germany canceled all its flights amid strikes by workers demanding labor improvements. According to local media, the protest was called by the Verdi public sector union, who are demanding higher salaries. The union says the strikes will continue in spite of the agreement with the employers, which consisted of a 5.5% increase starting last month until February 2024 to compensate for inflation. In addition to this day of protest, workers also called partial walkouts at the Hamburg airport. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Thousands of Sudanese flee the country 10 days after clashes between the army and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group. According to the United Nations, the conflict has so far left more than 420 dead and over 3,700 wounded. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs for Sudan stated that displacements of civilians have been registered from different Sudanese states, and cross-border movements from Sudan to Chad, Egypt and South Sudan have been observed. The UN representative in Chad, Laura Locastro, stated that between 10,000 and 20,000 Sudanese refugees have arrived in Chad. They pointed out that the African country continues to suffer from severe shortages of food, water, medicine and fuel, and limited access to communications and electricity due to the conflict. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that millions of citizens have been forced to flee their homes around the world to escape violence and conflict.
In Yemen and Libya, more than 100 million people have fled their homes to escape violence and conflicts around the world. Multilateral response is effective. A permanent order is required to resolve the conflicts and manage economic uncertainty, to rescue the Sustainable Development Goals and meet the challenges of global reform in the use and disposition of nuclear weapons. We are witnessing a worsening climate change crisis, a growing inequality, a rise in terrorism, and a global backlash on human rights, on gender watch, and on the unregulated development of dangerous technology. All of these global challenges can be solved through international law, the respect for global commitments, and the adoption of appropriate multilateral governance frameworks.
Saudi Arabia's civil aviation requested Iran to expand its flight frequency between the countries to 3 times a week. The Iranian Minister of Highways and Urban Development, Merhad Baspash, said both countries are interested in improving regional and international security within the framework of the implementation of the General Agreement on Economic Trade, Technical and Scientific Investment. Baspash commented that it is important to organize flights between Iran and Saudi Arabia and stressed the need to strengthen regional diplomacy. On March 10th, the two countries reached an agreement to resume diplomatic relations and reopen their embassies within 2 months. On Monday, police reported that 2 explosions rocked a counter-terrorism facility in northwest Pakistan, killing at least 12 people and injuring more than 50 others. Senior police officer Ataullah Khan said an initial blast at the facility in the Swat Valley district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province was followed by a larger, more intense one. Provincial Police Chief Akhtar Hayat said there was an old ammunition store in the office and police were probing whether that caused the explosions or if it was an attack. 2 attacks on large police bases have been linked to the Pakistani Taliban, known as Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, since the start of the year. The 5th ALBA Games continue. Venezuela won the finals of the men's and women's 500-meter speed skating. In the men's race, Jose Rojas won the gold medal after crossing the finish line first with a time of 49.69 seconds. Alejandro Chacon crossed the finish line second, followed by Javier Perez. In the women's race, Team A Venezuelans Will Mari Toro and Nelly Fernandez won the gold and silver medal respectively, and Cuban Adriana Cantillo completed the podium with the bronze medal. The ALBA Games are an opportunity for training and showcasing young athletes from their countries that participate in the Games. Most of them are under 23 and some are very young and are experiencing their first international competition. Leonel Retamal tells us the details.
One of the most outstanding features of the ALBA Games is the age of the athletes. Most of them are under 23 years of age. Many are boys and girls who are just starting out in their sporting careers.
The ALBA Games seems to me to be a great opportunity because they offer girls under 18 the chance to compete against other countries.
They are competitions. They are games that serve as a chance, as a way to improve the mistakes that we have made. They are for fine-tuning, to continue at the highest level.
Many are accompanied by their parents, who are their main support in their sporting careers.
Proud, happy, and grateful for the excitement that everyone experienced at the ALBA Games. Supporting sports talent and always seeking to help young people so they can pursue things in the future.
Countries test formulas with their athletes so that they gain experience in their sports and are more prepared to take part in competitions they face yearly.
Our national team is a very young team. This is a new and very good experience for them.
From a technical point of view, it is a competition that serves as preparation. Next week, these same teams will start the road to Paris 2024. May is a very tight month. We have 5 World Cups in all specialties, where the boys are going to add up, and this competition will help us to get ready for those events.
Working and playing with experienced athletes, many of them Olympic medalists, is an incentive to continue improving.
You have to start with events like this, that they start to gain competition experience. It's not just the experience of practicing and doing the tricks. Competing is very complicated. I am very excited that they could have that experience today, and maybe it can be the first day of the rest of their lives.
The 5th ALBA Games bring together more than 30 sports in different specialties and continue to develop in the spirit of the Brotherhood of the Alliance.
Leonel Retamal, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
After 4 days of competitions at the 5th ALBA Games, Venezuela continues to lead the medal standings. The hosts with their teams, A and B, the most numerous competing in the 33 disciplines schedule, have already won 69 gold, 75 silver and 50 bronze medals, for a total of 194. Cuba is next with 265 athletes in 24 disciplines, with an initial haul of 23 gold, 10 silver and 10 bronze. Nicaragua is currently third with 3 golds, 12 silvers and 30 bronzes, followed by Bolivia with 3 golds, 1 silver and 3 bronzes. In addition, athletes from Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia and Rocha take part in the regional event as guest countries. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.